Greetings one and all to the Dark Rider Pony and Arceus. I am the Nightmare Rider, Major Mind, reminding you as always that even a cheeseburger can be deconstructed to its original source. Rainbow Falls was an episode that I personally have been looking forward to a great deal. The story had a great deal of potential to expand upon a conflict that my favourite pony, Rainbow Dash, has showed to some extent in Wonderbolt's Academy. So can she do it again here? Well, both yes and no. You see, this episode has a lot of problems that drag it down from what it is trying to achieve. Rainbow Dash isn't so much the problem herself, it's how most of the other characters are portrayed in order to make the story work. Digibony, Tommy Oliver and the Voice of Reason have already said a lot about the feelings of this episode, which I personally agree on, but what I want to focus on are the central mechanics of the story. Through my deconstruction, I aim to show where the story falls apart and how it could have been improved upon. One of my biggest gripes in storytelling is when established characters are simplified or make out-of-character actions just so that they can bend over backwards to make the plot work. The term Thunderization is used a lot by Brony analysts, especially during Season 4 reviews, but it is important to understand just what it means. It is defined as taking a single aspect out of character, turning it up to 11 and having that as their only defining character trait. Or as the mysterious Mr. Enter put it, if you can define a character in one simple word or a very short sentence. This only applies, however, if the character in previous episodes had more depth. If you cannot write your characters to work with that plot, don't write them at all. This is the problem we see right away, as Rainbow Dash has apparently chosen Fluttershy and Bulk Biceps, formerly named Snowflake, to be her partner in the relay race trials to qualify for representing Ponyville in the Equestria Games. This episode plays fast and loose with the concept of continuity, here being one example. Bulk Biceps was in the Wonderbolt's Academy. He is shown to fly perfectly fine there, as well as being a part of the tornado in Hurricane Fluttershy. Here, he is portrayed as barely able to keep himself in the air without being completely exhausted. Fluttershy has a similar case of poor character writing, but to a much lesser extent. While she did overcome her fear of flying in front of others at the end of Hurricane Fluttershy, she still isn't exactly an athlete, barely making the minimum wind power needed to create a tornado and suck up water to Cloudsdale. The fact that these two ponies, who are the least athletic ponies in Ponyville, have been chosen by Rainbow Dash to compete in an elite sporting event is not only contrived, but nonsensical. This is all for the sake of making the conflict blindingly obvious, which is a complete insult to the intelligence of the audience. As previous episodes have shown, even if you grant that this is a kids show, you don't need to make the conflict completely obvious for kids to understand it. We are given a brief explanation from two existing Pegasi that they couldn't sign up for more than one event, but this barely helps since we're expected to believe that every other Pegasi is occupied through different events. Think of how many there were just to make the tornado in Hurricane Fluttershy. Every single one of them, except for the weakest possible flyers, are in an event that would need at most 3 individual ponies. Contrivance count number 2. When Twilight underhandedly admits that Dash's teammates aren't good flyer, Dash just says that she can make up the time difference all by herself. Rainbow Dash is confident and somewhat arrogant, but she is not stupid. Rainbow Dash should remember how important working as an equal and small team should be from Wonderbolt's Academy. She saw how Lightning Dust caused such havoc by being inconsiderate of anyone else rather than working with Rainbow Dash. So why does Dash, who values being competitive so highly, choose not 1 weak flyer, but 2 weak flyers to be part of the team? There is being loyal to your friends and helping to coach underachievers. Then there is shooting yourself in the foot. Remember what I said earlier about characters being twisted to fit in a scenario where they aren't useful at all in? This is what I and other MLP analysts mean when we say something is forced. Bulk Biceps was put into this episode for fan pandering with little regard for how it would have worked with the concept of the story. Bulk makes less sense than the completely new regular Pegasi who just happened to be a weak flyer. I wouldn't even mind Bulk Biceps if they had just shown him and Fluttershy to be progressing at a different rate. If Rainbow Dash had measured this progress versus the established Wonderbolt skill, it would have been better conflict and a better moral. I try to avoid judging episodes based on what they could be and not what they are, are, but this only applies when the story at hand actually works. In this case, it doesn't work at all. We hammer in the point over and over about how Fluttershy and bulk biceps are the absolute bottom of the barrel choice for the athletic event. This fails because there is almost no logical reason at all, besides being friends, for Rainbow Dash to want to stay with the existing team, since they're barely even capable of qualifying for the event, let alone winning against a fragging Wonderbolt. Despite this, I still think she is still in character for most of the episode. Rainbow Dash shows excitement at flying with her heroes in competition, but also conflict at the prospect of having to abandon her own team, which would mean complete lack of representation for Ponyville. She doesn't want to upset her friends and is clearly feeling peer pressure when confronted with one of her biggest dreams. This event goes beyond Wonderbolt's Academy training. This is the real thing. Given what she goes through, I think Rainbow Dash handles it in quite a mature way. Then we come to another big problem that makes the story even more of a contrivance: the Wonderbolts themselves. It's good that Spitfire makes callbacks to Wonderbolt's Academy to give a basis as to why Rainbow Dash is good for their team. She can not only fly fast, but she can also handle the intense workouts that the Wonderbolts go through to keep up their athletic stamina. This is continuity done right. Then, after Soaring crashes, Spitfire and Fleetfoot deceptively suggest that Rainbow Dash joins their team to train while Soarin heals, then make up a lie about Soarin not being ready in time. This is continuity done wrong. Considering how much emphasis Spitfire put on teamwork in Wonderbolt's Academy, the fact that she so quickly dumps Soarin is just being an antagonist for the sake of being an antagonist. We may not have seen Fleetfoot before, but Spitfire's actions are just so blatantly ignoring continuity. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there more than 3 Wonderbolts in total? Where were the other Wonderbolts? Were there no other Wonderbolts that could have possibly taken on for the team, except for Rainbow Dash? This is, of course, never explained and done purely for the sake of the plot, which is yet another, you guessed it, a contrivance. In my previous reviews, I have said how annoying it is to have the main 6 forced into situations where they are superfluous to the plot. Well, here is your shining example. They could have easily been just cheering on the sidelines without having to repeat one-note Thunderized jokes over and over. Even though Pinkie Pie's cheerleading and occasional comments were fun, Applejack and Rarity were just annoying. While I didn't mind the fact that Rarity did indeed return to Ponyville, giving the job in Manhattan to Coco Pommel, it would have made a lot more sense for her to have stayed in Canterlot at this point and sent her costumes, which don't even get used, through the mail. Either way, if you had written their characters out completely, this episode would have lost absolutely nothing. Even worse is Twilight. She is so condescending in this episode, it's ridiculous. While Voice of Reason did say that Twilight was acting as a neutral moderator, I have to disagree. She wasn't actually helping Rainbow Dash in any way, just acting incredibly condescending and putting more guilt on Rainbow Dash's shoulders to be loyal to her friends. She had zero sympathy or understanding for Twilight's dilemma at all. If she wants Rainbow Dash to learn a lesson, how about understanding why she is doing something first? Rainbow Dash eventually decides to fake an injury to get out of choosing, which everyone but Twilight is completely oblivious to. This is where we actually get the better character moments from Fluttershy. She actually relates to Rainbow Dash, saying how she understands how much competing means to her. Even if it means she doesn't win herself, she cares more about Rainbow Dash being happy at achieving something important to her. Then we get an example of fan pandering done correctly. The glorious and triumphant return of Derpy Hooves. Despite what I felt was a contrivance for no able-bodied flyers to be in the relay race, I still felt that Derpy served a good purpose. Considering that we know Derpy to be at least remotely capable flyer and her enthusiasm for helping despite her clumsiness, I think that even if it didn't serve a perfect purpose, it's excusable at the very least. After Rainbow Dash reveals reveals that Soren has been lied to and given another hint of a season-wide story arc involving the Rainbow Light, Rainbow Dash decides to confront the Wonderbolt and say outright that her friends are more important to her than guaranteed success. I can partially justify Spitfire's 180 on learning Rainbow Dash's lesson, since she admires Rainbow Dash's guts, but what I cannot justify so readily is Soren rejoining the team after being previously rejected so quickly. This whole concept would have worked better if it was Spitfire who was injured, then Fleetfoot and the previously unseen Wonderbolt decide to disregard her. It would have made more sense for Spitfire to be an authority figure that teaches the lessons she already knew from Wonderbolt's academy, with the other two retroactively learning from her with a guilty conscience. Add to this the showing of how much training and improved flying skills of both Biceps and Fluttershy rather than just barely qualifying in the end, then the whole moral of choosing your friends over easy victories would have felt a lot more genuine. So now it's time to wrap up my thoughts on the episode. This could have been a good episode like Pinky Apple Pie, but while that episode put all the emotional development arcs for the characters in the right place, this episode puts them all in the wrong place. Characters are strawmanned and flanderized for the sake of the conflict, the story itself takes numerous leaps in logic, and the whole moral feels hollow because it had to make the conflict as obvious as possible for the audience to recognize it at all. Despite my harshness to this episode, I won't classify it as a terrible episode because I felt it was more lazy bad than offensively bad. It doesn't step into the territory of Dragon Quest or the mysterious mare duel, mostly thanks to Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy being the best written characters in the whole episode, as well as some good background, world building, and derpy. I give Rainbow Falls a final grade of a straight D. Until the next review, this is the Nightmare Rider, Major Mind, riding out.